Hello chess friends and welcome to the Chess channel and welcome back to our series the best chess games of all time. So in this series I'm going to show you some best games that have been played in chess history, and today I wanted to show a really immortal chess game played by Danil Dubov and Nxc3 back from 2019. This game is really wild, really incredible. That's sort of a Mikhail Tal game, and I really loved this game. And recently Danil Dubov has been, of course, one of our top grandmasters, one of our favorite grandmasters these days, because he's playing simply this beautiful attacking chess. He's not going into positional setups. He's not playing these boring games. Sometimes in chess, at least these days in modern era, I see many times this pragmatic chess, positional chess. We don't want to calculate so much. We want to keep a calm game. But Danil Dubov is simply a different player. He is always trying to search for attacking opportunities. So let's check out now the game. So as said, Danil Dubov versus Nxc3. Be prepared. This is really wild. So d4 play by Dubov. We have knight to f6 by Anish, c4, e6, knight to f3, the counter Nimzo Indian setup, as I mentioned many times in my videos. Bishop to b4 then can be met with knight to d2 or bishop to d2. We don't have to play knight to c3 because after bishop takes c3 there are some positional ideas of blacks to double up our pawn structure on the c file, so we're delaying a little bit the situation here on the queen side. So d5, here you can go knight to c3 or bishop to f4, bishop to g5. Knight to c3, it can also lead in complicated lines. After d takes c4, e4, then bishop to b4 is also a very often played line. Here Danil Dubov plays immediately bishop to g5, and he's pinning the knight. It's a very natural idea in chess to simply pin one piece. And what I liked also about Nxc3's game was that he accepted basically Danil Dubov's challenge. He wanted to create a dynamic game. He wanted really to play a wild game. In the game, Anish took simply d takes c4, and many times you'll see that black first delays, so he plays basically the queen's gambit decline, but then afterwards when something happens we'll play this move d takes c4 in order to create further dynamics. So we can notice now the pawn structure is asymmetrical. There is this 4 versus 2 situation on the queen side. White can get some central pawn control here with the move e4. We still have the spin, so it's a very aggressive approach here of white, but also of blacks. There are now several lines that you can play, and here Danil Dubov played the move e4. He attacks immediately the position you cannot of course take. The serious threat is the move e5. Here b5 played by Nxc3, but an early e5 move here by white is not so great. It seems like a dangerous idea. I think many of us would play this move, but actually this e5 can be met with h6, a counter attack here against the bishop, and maybe you can stay on this diagonal, bishop to h4, but then after g5, knight to g5, h takes g5, bishop to g5. Okay, you will get your knight back, but black can play a calm line with knight to d7. And you see now, I think what worries white now always is a little bit here the space advantage on the queen. As I said, you get your knight back with bishop to f6 or e takes f6. Even if you take here e takes f6, I don't think that you gain so much, because this is a pass pawn of course, but it cannot be so early pushed, I think, in an early stage of the game. Meanwhile, I think black will find ways here to attack the position on the queen side. The attack of white is a little bit splashed, so as I said, here after the move b5, e5 is not such a dangerous idea. It seems so, but it's maybe not the best of ways. Here Danil Dubov plays the move a4. Anish protects his extra pawn now with the move c6, and now we have knight to c3. Here Anish goes with the move b4. It's also a very aggressive line. What Danil Dubov played here is sort of a provocative move. He waited now this move b4. Okay, black can get the tempo, then we're trading to b1, but then the c4 pawn is a long-term weakness. So that's this move knight to c3 is really a provocative move here by Danil Dubov. Maybe a better way here for Nxc3 is also to play the move a6. a6 is very interesting because it leads now also into a complicated line. After a takes b5, c takes b5. I've played several times a similar knight, the same line with the black pieces. I try to trick my opponent into some lines after knight to b5 is actually a very tricky idea. It's a poison pawn variation, sort of. It's a it's a trap. After knight to b5, we can actually take here from black's perspective. I just wanted to show a really cool line. After a takes b5, okay, white can get the rook, but now we can play bishop to b7, attacking the rook. And now if the rook retreats, we can still play this move h6. And now after bishop to f6, there is an intermediate move that we have to play. It's the move bishop to b4. This trap I want you really to memorize. Maybe you can use it sometimes. After queen to f6, it's not so good because we can then play bishop to c4 here from white's perspective. After b takes c4, queen to a4 is the check. Bishop to c6 can be played, but now queen to c4 is a very complicated line now for black to defend, because black has of course two minor pieces for the rook, but it's complicated. So that's why after those move bishop to f6, we have to play this intermediate check, bishop to b4, first the check, then the king comes to e2. That's the main issue, and now we can take out the bishop. The problem is now this bishop to c4 idea doesn't work. So that's simply a trap that I wanted to show today, and this is, I think, a great line now for black, although down the exchange, but this king is in danger, the bishop's activity, this pawn is weak. So yeah, I think it's a pleasant game here for black. Castling rook to d8 is an opportunity, so I think it's something that white should resign. So that was the suggested line. After potential a6, you can maybe trap your opponent here with a very aggressive line. In the game, Nxc3 played the move b4 instead of a6. We have now knight to b1. As we said, this was a provocative move by Danil Dubov. Now he wants to simply attack this pawn on c4. Anish defends this. We have e5. Now comes again a similar idea, h6, but now the position is different. Here after bishop to f6, we have g takes f6, and now after e takes f6, queen to f6 is not such a powerful idea here for black, because knight to d2 could happen. And if you try here c3, there are now several games also in the database in this particular line. Both of these games are winning for white. B takes c3, b takes c3, and now knight to e4. That's the main issue, I think, here for black. Black has to retreat maybe to f5, and now we could play bishop to d3, or taking out the bishop, then queen to e2, and similar ideas. So I think it's perfectly fine here, the position for white. We'll take eventually this pawn on c3, then rook to c1, also attacking maybe here the c6 weakness. So it's playable also for white. So after e takes f6, Nxc3 tries to break the position. He is attacking, of course, the center, because both kings are still in the center, both kings are endangered. It's a very often played line also here by black, simply trying to open the position in the center. We have knight to d2, and again a similar position appears, because after c3 we have b takes c3. A better idea maybe instead of the c3 is finally to take out this pawn on f6, and it's okay. Maybe knight to e4 could happen here, attacking the queen. But now after queen to f5, I think black is two more moves far away from casting, from developing, securing the king. So as I said, this is really a line that's complicated to play. Both players have great attacking opportunities. So here after the move c3, Danil Dubov simply takes b takes c3, b takes c3, and now knight to e4. Again, the same idea. We have c takes d4, and now a bishop to b5 by Danil Dubov. What he wants to get now is an a pawn, to take out with the a pawn, in order to liberate, of course, his a file, to attack the weak a7 pawn, because then the rook on a8 is a little bit stuck to the defense of the a7. In the game, here Nxc3 tried the counterattack, tried to attack this pawn on b5, and Danil Dubov simply takes queen takes d4. If now queen takes d4 happens, then of course knight to d4, and these knights are very annoying. They're centralized. This pawn is a weakness. We can use also knight to c6 ideas. We can also even now queenside castling, getting use of the d file attack here. So this knight is also then a little bit stuck here on b8, because if the knight comes to d7, then we'll use simply new square on the board. We'll simply use the weak c6 square. So the centralized knights, I think, are simply great here for white. So it's not something that black should do here, trade off the queen. So that's why Nxc3 took the pawn on b5, but now the game becomes really wild after knight to c3, attacking the queen here, bishop to b4, played by Nxc3, and you can guess what Danil Dubov does here. There are no good ways here for white. For instance, the engine suggests here move knight to d2 in order to keep the pieces on the board. Here after bishop to c3, queen to c3, this should be probably an equal game. Knight to c4 with preparations of course to play the move queen to d6, but now after queen to b4, maybe the queens are off the board, and now knight to d6. You would be forced to play, of course, king to f8 because your f7 pawn is saying maybe king to f8, but now after kingside castling, okay, black is up a pawn, but I think the activity of white's pieces gives some counterattack possibilities here for white. We can attack simply the weak pawn on h7. The knight is centralized. Black still needs many tempi in order to regroup, in order to get the rooks back into the game. So that's why I think it's an equal game for both sides. But after the move bishop to b4, said knight to d2 is the suggested line by the engine, but Danil Dubov goes all in, plays really a wild game. Kingside castling is not possible because the queen cut off here the f1 square. Here Danil Dubov castles queenside. Really wild stuff. Sick move by Danil Dubov, castling into your opponent's attack. You see, you don't have any more pawns in front of your king. You don't have even a dark square bishop because we don't have the defenders of the dark squares here. Bishop to a3, if you play, it's not so dangerous. I think we can play simply king to c2. You get maybe one check with queen to b2, and now pardon me, after queen to b2, king to d3, and now there is the serious threat of rook to b1. So the knight is protecting the king very easily. It's not so easy for black now to attack further the position. Maybe this was even a slightly better line. Queen to b6 is now the suggested move by the engine, again trying to simplify the position. After king to c2, maybe trading off here the knights, and again knight to d7 could happen, and again it would be an equal game maybe for both sides. But Nxc3 makes a huge blunder. He plays the move queen to a5. It seems again like a dangerous idea. We're attacking further the dark squares. We're attacking here with some potential bishop to a3 or queen to a3 moves. We're also attacking the knight on c3. So it seems so that white is endangered, but actually this was a mistake because Danil Dubov found a great counterattack. He played the move knight to b5. Knight to b5 is of course a great move because the queen cannot take. The queen gets deflected from the square d8 and you get checkmated if you take the knight. So that's why here Nxc3 had to regroup, has to bring more pieces into the defense. But Danil Dubov plays here queen to d7 anyway, king to f8. We have king to b1. Look how Danil Dubov secures the position. If you try now rook to b8, in order to attack the position, in order to attack the knight to e5. That's the main issue here. The threat here around the square f7 is simply too much to handle. If you take, of course, there are also some even some checkmate threats with rook to queen to d8 or queen to f7. So these are these two threats that the black has to take care of through the whole game. So queen to f7, but also queen to d8 is a threat. Then followed with rook to d8, you get checkmated on the 8th rank because the pawn is very annoying here. So after the move, let's go back here. After the move, king to b1 in the game, bishop to a3 was played by Nxc3. He's like again trying some ideas of queen to b4, then queen to b2, but in the game Danil Dubov found a great way how to defend his position. Rook to d3. Okay, you get one check. Queen to b4, nothing special there. King to c2, and now after queen to a4, the white king can escape. Even if you try queen to b2, it's not a problem because we'll simply play king to d1. And if you play now queen to b1 in order to get this very annoying check, king to e2, and if you take out the rook, then you get this checkmate. That we said, this is the serious threat that black worries all through the whole game. Queen to d8 is a serious threat. You have to take care of this move. So that's why after the move king to c2, queen to a4 was played by Nxc3. We have king to d2, bishop to b4. Here Anish tried some perpetual checks. He tried at least to get a draw by checking further the king, but you see now how great this move rook to d3 was. Now Danil Dubov can hide the king here, maybe through e3, f4, or also the square g3. So here king to King to g8 was played. As we said, there is this threat, queen to d8 followed with rook to d8 with this beautiful queen sacrifice, checkmate. So that's why Anish had to escape with the king to g8. Knight to e5 was played, threatening again this checkmate on f7. So here first the check play by Anish Giri. We have king to f3 and now rook to f8 protecting the f7. We have now rook from h to d1. There are now maybe even better moves when it comes to engine calculations, but this is still a great move. Rook to d1, getting this very nice battery on the d file, getting the last piece into the attack. It's a pragmatic idea. When we play attacking chess, we want to include all of our pieces in the attack. So after rook from h to d1, we have now h5. Anish Giri is trying to get some more space for the king, because the king is really weird here. Among these rooks, it's simply too endangered in the game. Daniil Dubov simply attacks the position for the queen to queen to d4. The serious threat now is queen to f4 followed with queen to g5, getting a checkmate here on g7. So that's why Anish tried to defend this position with rook to h7, but it's simply too late. Queen to f4 happened anyway. Bishop to c5, threatening here a check on f2. So here knight to d4. There are maybe some better ways here. Queen to g5 anyway. Maybe king to h8 can be played, but now rook to d2 is also playable as a defensive idea here for white to protect this f2. Still, we're threatening some nasty ideas, so it's simply a lost game here for Anish Giri. After move bishop to c5, we said knight to d4. Here in the game, Anish tried queen to a2. We have now again a similar idea, rook to d2, protecting our second rank. We have queen to d4, queen to d5, the check, king to e2, and now after bishop to b4, now a great move by Daniil Dubov, knight to c6. The serious threat about this move is a very annoying knight to e7. You see now the importance of this move, because if you try now bishop to d2, then queen to g3 will happen. You have to move your king to h8, and now we can take out, of course, the queen. That's the main issue. You get simply too much attacked by this heavy artillery, by the rook, by the queen, by these minor pieces. In the game, queen to c5 was played by Anish Giri. It's a huge blunder. Pause the video and try now to see the best continuation here for white. It's, of course, I think a simple tactic to win this game. So okay, here the correct move is, of course, knight to e7, and here if you move your king to h8, now comes this idea. This is the serious threat that bothers, I think, black here. Whatever you do, if you take out with this rook, rook from f to f7, then you get again this rook to d8, rook to f8, and you get checkmate. So if you take out with this rook, let's go back. If you take out with this rook, then the queen sneaks in, queen to h6, then king to rook to h7, and then queen to f8 is again a checkmate. So these are the threats. You cannot do anything. You can maybe give up the queen here, knight to f7, maybe here instead of this one, queen takes e7, but then again it's simply a lost game here for black. Bishop to e7 could happen, and still it's of course playable here. Rook to g3, it's simply something that black should resign. So beautiful attack by Daniil Dubov. Let's go back to this idea. So queenside castling, that was really a stunner. As said, it wasn't maybe the best suggested move by the engine, but this is something that only Daniil Dubov can make. Queenside castling, it's really a pragmatic idea, great attack. We have seen there were some lines for Anish Giri to defend this position, but still queenside castling, I think, surprised here Anish Giri. He couldn't find good counterattacks, and Daniil Dubov won this beautiful chess game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more great attacking games like this, check out my best chess games of all time series with some more beautiful chess games from the past. Here's the link. And if you want to see maybe the engines battling it out with their best chess games, check out my commented chess games played by computers. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.